This is what I've been waiting for, man. Yeah, yeah, yeah. This is what I've been waiting for, man.
What is really good? Brand new vodcast. This time we representing the Nevada Digital Engineers. This is the Invincible Vodcast brought to you by your familiar friends. We just move locales. We don't change. We evolve in this joint right here. So familiar hustle. Mike Lang, one half of those intelligent hoodlums. Well, again, we're representing the Nevada digital engineers at this point, bringing digital goodness throughout the internet, even if you're not in Nevada. And as always, I'm joined by the homie Webbs. Tell the people what up.
Hey, I'm Webbs. I'm a software engineer and I was a teacher for 10 years. And now I just play around on the internet, I guess.
That's what's really hood. So I mean, how many people are saying that they're rocking the internets both with the educational lens in the truest sense, and also the software engineering lens in the truest sense. So this podcast is going to be different from most of the podcasts that you watch because we do have a practicing in the classroom teacher and a practicing in the remote world software engineer representing every time you see us. So we're just gonna get grimy. We're gonna do what we do. We're gonna make some things happen. We're gonna talk. We're gonna laugh. We're gonna do some demos and see what pops off. And that's how we get down. That's how we've been getting down. That's how we've been getting down for years, man. So again, even though the representation has different, the content is still gonna be dope. So that's how we get down with it. So Webbs, we got an action-packed show tonight. This is the inaugural episode, and really kind of looking at the scenario in which, if we're saying like we're looking at remote learning and whatnot, and lots of teachers are having some struggles, they're having some issues. Um, we're gonna let's go and let's kind of play around with the idea of remote work and what remote work actually means, because that's the big, like, I guess that's the reason why a lot of the pain is being suffered right now, right? This is a totally different environment for a lot of teachers. You've got kids who are remote workers. You have your grown up people who are remote workers, and the teachers are remote workers, and everyone's in this like alien place. And so we're going to start our show off tonight with our segment Webbs Knows, because Webbs is a software developer. She's been doing this for a minute. In terms of remote work, all right, for someone who's a total novice to this deal, somebody who's had some pains, like what kind of things would you advise them to look into?
So, remote work is actually a fairly new thing for me. When I was looking at, transforming away from education is when I first was introduced to this idea of remote work. And I'll never forget the first job I interviewed for. It was a remote position, and it was a very small startup, just one guy, and he was hiring a second employee, and he asked me why are you interested in remote work? And I was honest, and maybe I shouldn't have been honest because I was like, well, really, I want to be able to walk the dog before I go to work in the morning and set my own schedule. And so that's really why I want to do remote work, which in retrospect, probably not the thing that he wanted me to say, but whatever. Here we are, 3 years, 4 years, 3 years on, and I get to go walk the dog before I go to work every morning. So I regret nothing. Um, yeah, in terms of remote work, one of the things that um when in my time at ThoughtWorks, I learned more about remote work and what that means and some of the pitfalls that we may not think about. So one of the pitfalls that a lot of folks may not think about is that remote workers are actually more likely to suffer burnout. And that's because, when you're in an office or when you're in a school, your coworkers can see you. So they can see, or in theory at least, they can see that you're on task. They can see that you're working on something. They can see that you're busy. And it's also sort of our default way of working. So we don't think much about it. But when we're not in the same place as our coworkers, we start to feel this trepidation and anxiety about, oh my gosh, what if they think I'm not working? What if they think I'm not working? What if they try to message me and I'm not there and then they think I'm not working? And so, and not only that, but we don't have that commute time. So it makes it a lot more difficult to turn off and to turn off thoughtfully. Like, okay, work is done now. I'm transitioning to my home time. So there's a couple different things you can do to kind of combat that. One of the things is putting it into perspective. So when you start to feel that trepidation about what if my coworker tries to message me and I'm not at my keyboard? Well, what if your coworker comes by your classroom and you're not there? You're in the lounge making copies or something. They're not going to assume that you're not working. You're just not there and they'll find you later or send you an email or shoot you a message. Like that's fine. It's okay to walk away and go to the bathroom. Like that's one of the best parts I think I would imagine about working remotely as a teacher is you can put things on pause and go use the restroom whenever you want. You don't need someone to cover your class. You can just go and put it on pause, not a big deal. So that's part of it is like it's a mindset thing and recognizing the fact that you can walk away. People aren't going to think you're not doing something. And some of that too is building trust with your colleagues. So don't assume if you can't get a hold of them that they're not working. And you may not think anything about that. And they probably don't think anything about it either. A lot of it's probably in your head. Making sure that you are thoughtful about taking breaks. So we've talked about Pomodoro technique, and you set an hour timer, and then after an hour, you take a 5-minute break. You set a 50-minute timer, and then take a 5-minute break. However you want to break it up, do that. Think about that for your students as well. It's really important that they have the opportunity to get up and walk away from the screen. I know when I started working at Aristocrat, one of the things that they taught us was every 20 minutes, you should be taking a 20-second break to look at something at least 20 feet away so that your eyes have a chance to like readjust, look at something far. You're giving them that break from staring at the screen all the time. That's another like tip for working, making sure your ergonomics are good. So you shouldn't be craning over to look at your desk. You shouldn't be looking up at your desk. It should be about eye level. And for a lot of folks, that means raising up your platform for your computer so that when you're looking into the camera, you're looking at eye level. Making sure your keyboard is at the right height. Making sure your feet can touch the ground. That you're well supported. You're in a good chair. Don't just take your dining room chair and work out of that. Over time you're going to end up with a lot of mechanical issues with your body. Making sure that you're exercising to build those muscles. Most workers, even if it's not just remote, but like most office workers, have issues with like their hips and like their posterior chain or something. That's what my trainer told me when I started working with him last year. Was you are obviously a desk worker because you're weak in all the same places that all desk workers are weak in.
Interesting.
Yeah. So those would be the big things. Making sure, like, really fighting that burnout and being intentional about fighting that burnout for yourself and for your students. I think that's like the number one first lesson to tackle if you're a newly remote worker, because it's really easy to find yourself just stuck at your desk. I talked a little bit about transitioning, setting a time when you're like, okay, my day is over. I'm going to go walk around the block as my transition to home time, because that time is valuable. That wind down time where your brain kind of expels out the rest of your work stuff and you kind of like shift into, okay, I'm home now mode. That's hard to do when when you're working in the same space. Another reason to not work at your dining room table. I realize that's not an option for everyone, but make your dining room to be intentional about the places in your living space if you can. Even if it's just a little tiny space like in a corner, that's okay. But if you're working at your dining room table and you're trying to eat at your dining room table and everything happens, it's hard for your brain to know, what am I doing right now? Am I working? Am I home? Am I eating? So having thoughtful spaces that are, if at all possible, separate so that you can be like, okay, now I'm in home mode. Okay, now I'm in work mode. And that's really going to help your context switching as well. So those are just a few tips that I would offer if you're a newly remote worker and you're trying to figure out how to balance all this stuff.
Right. So say you're someone who is like, um, say you need a pivot. All right, so that's kind of one of the things that I'm seeing a lot on social media. A lot of, again, the biggest beef, it seems, with teachers is that trust you kind of talked about, and not the trust with another teacher, the trust with your students, and saying, okay, cool, I've given you these tasks. Um, how does one, because your students now, in a real sense, are your coworkers, right? They're not your students. These are the I'm giving you a task that I'm expecting you to do in order for our company to be successful. And how does that work when perhaps the employees, your fellow employees, aren't living up to their part of the bargain with remote work? What are some things that perhaps, some structures you might want to consider, some strategies you might want to employ that would encourage people who are also feeling the angst of remote work to plug themselves in?
I'm going to give an answer and you tell me if that's kind of what you were thinking of. So if I so like I think about my day to day, right? So I'm given a piece of work that I'm supposed to accomplish, or several sometimes. Um, and I have to balance, like, what of that am I going to get done during the day, and how am I going to tackle it? How am I going to break up my day? Because my boss is not here. I don't leave my house for work. So, and my boss doesn't have an always on camera that tells them whether I'm working or not. And in fact, it's up to me to decide, like, how my time gets broken up. As long as my job gets done, nobody cares when I work. Nobody cares how many hours I put in, as long as the job gets done. So one of the things we do is we check in with one another in the morning at a ritual we call stand up, where we say, we go through, and I've done this two different ways on different teams. One way is we have a board, like if you use a tool like Trello, or I'm trying to Jamboard maybe, or something along those lines. And basically it looks like post-it notes in columns. Kanban, if you're familiar with that, like that's kind of the approach. It's basically like several swim lanes, several columns with cards in them, and each card represents a piece of work that's being worked on. So, you can walk, we call it walking the board, and you can go through each piece of work and ask that person who's responsible for it for an update, because like our names get attached to those stories. And or you can ask each person, you can go in a circle or go around the team and ask each person, like, what did you do yesterday? What are you planning to do today? And do you have any blockers? And so if that's the same every day with no reason why, then that's a good indication that person is either stuck. I'm going to stop it there. That's a good indication that person is stuck. The reason why they may be stuck could be different. Maybe they're still trying to figure out how to manage their time. And I think this is probably more true in the case of students. They need to figure out, like, did I bite off more than I can chew? Did I end up spending more time playing video games on my break than I thought I would? Did I not really understand what I was supposed to be doing and it felt overwhelming? I'm a firm believer that lazy isn't a thing. Usually, people who are lazy are really just overwhelmed by whatever task is in front of them, and they don't know how to take off a reasonable chunk of it. And so they might need help from someone with more experience figuring out how to make that task smaller. Folks with executive processing issues, like folks with ADHD, often struggle with, like, how do I even start on this task? So there could be lots of reasons why people are struggling and feeling blocked. It could be something external. Maybe I was waiting on my partner to finish something before I could start my piece of the task. And so I'm still stuck and haven't done anything because my partner didn't finish their piece. There
Gotcha.
could be a lot of reasons why someone gets stuck, but we have an opportunity to go over those things so that if it is an external thing, we have an opportunity to raise it to our project manager so that the project manager can help us remove that blocker. Or maybe I need expertise from someone else on the team. That happened to me just a couple days ago. I got stuck on my piece of work. I needed someone with a little more expertise in Terraform. And I said, hey, so and so on the team, can you make some time for me today to help me figure this out? Because I know you have more experience than I do. So that was my blocker in that case. I needed someone else's experience. And so having that ritual of stand up is an opportunity for students to think through, what did I do yesterday? Did I accomplish the things that I would have expected to accomplish? And I shared a little, like, one sheet with our patrons on Patreon. But did I accomplish what I expected to accomplish, or did I get stuck? And then for students, I think it's better to go, what did I do yesterday? Do I have any blockers? What am I going to do today? Because thinking through that, okay, what is blocking me?
Mhm.
Why am I stuck? Is it a me thing or is it an external thing? Who can I go to for help on that thing? So, and then talking about, okay, what am I going to do today to improve that? So if my blocker was I try to take on too many things, I'm going to cut down on the number of things. I'm going to focus on getting one thing done today. And if I get that one thing done, then maybe tomorrow I try two and I figure out, do an experiment to figure out where my sticking point is. But a ritual like stand up will help work through those problems, and it'll also give a piece of accountability so that if a student is working on something, you can see that they're making progress because they're going to give you an update at stand up. And if they say, "Oh, I didn't do anything," okay, well, what was your blocker? And now you're working through that conversation of like, why are you stuck? And you're building that trust. And it's not coming from a place that's accusatory of you're lazy and you're not getting your work done. It's coming from a place of I want to help you meet your goals, meet our goals, and how can I help you do that? And if the student chooses not to engage at that point, like it's not really on the teacher. Like the teacher's trying to provide as much help as possible. Um, yeah, but I think stand up is a good framework for that to create accountability, but accountability in such a way that it's not an accusatory thing. And as far as when that student gets the work done, it shouldn't matter. Like if they want to do the work at 3 p.m., if they want to do the work at midnight, it's up to them. And I think it's actually a good opportunity for them to work through what works for me and to figure those things out. Because I think in school, we don't have that option. Every kid is on the same schedule, every kid does the same thing. This is really a huge opportunity for students to figure themselves out and figure out what works best for them so that when they become, for elementary kids, when they go into middle school, high school, college, their career, they know that piece about themselves and they can be the best, you know, student or teammate or whatever that they could possibly be.
Yeah, chronotypes are real, and I think that's one of the things that is very frustrating for me. Let me say it this way: it's a bright spot that right now kids can live their chronotype without any real punishments, right? So there's a scenario in which students are going to turn working at 11 o'clock p.m. If that's when your optimal hours are, great, turn your work in then. But I think we still are trying to shoehorn a lot of students into this. You will work from 7 to 2 or whatever it is, and again, that may not be optimal time for me. So definitely understand what you're saying. I think the stand up idea is genius. I think that's something that perhaps we should be working into even when we go back to physical school. That kind of a scenario in which students are given a lot more independence to go and say, cool, I've got all my work set out for me. Give me a strategy that's going to let me organize this work in such a way that I'm going to be able to be successful. And then when I'm not successful, there's someone there again who's not accusing me of being lazy or trying to cut corners or anything like that. But there's someone who's there's the empathy first scenario rather than again using grades and things like that for punishment, which I think is another. That's we can go into a whole nother conversation about um, the problem with grades, especially now. I mean, I think it highlights that even more at this point. So stand up. Anything else? Are there any other strategies you have utilized as a software engineer that perhaps teachers could either investigate or start to integrate into their remote teaching to have better student outcomes and better student efficacy during this time?
Hmm. I think another practice would be retrospectives.
Okay.
I kind of harp on the retrospective thing. Retrospectives are basically at the end of a project or at the end of a certain time frame. You reflect back on that time frame or on that project, and you examine, what could we have done to be more successful, and what things did we do that we want to continue to do, or as someone at a recent retro said, turn up to 11 in order to be more successful. And retrospectives always are done with what's called the prime directive in mind. So the idea that everyone involved did the best they could with what they knew at that time. So it's not a place for blame at all. It's really just a place to reflect on your time frame or your project and discuss like what went well, what tripped people up, what could we have done better. And I think that's something that you could do. You could do that at the end of the day. You could do it at the end of the week. So again, going back to the empowering students to reflect on their own practices, because I think one of the struggles is, we see students go off to, because we were both elementary teachers primarily. And so we see students go off to middle school and high school and then college in their career, and they can't function independently. And we're surprised by that. And that's something that I've never quite understood, because we basically spoon feed everything and then expect them to follow exactly the way that we do all the things. You must give me the right answer. You must follow this straight line. You must follow my procedures. Don't think for yourself. And then when they're given this open world to try and figure things out, they flounder, and we're shocked. And I'm not surprised that they flounder, because we don't ever have them exercise those muscles of figuring out what works best for me. How do I function? How do I manage my time? How do I manage competing priorities? They never exercise that. We give them everything. We give them their worksheets, we give them their modules, we tell them what to learn, we test them on exactly what the right answer is. Giving them open-ended questions where they're like, there is no right answer, and they have to just like brainstorm, come up with whatever creative answer they can. Like, that's another opportunity there. But going back to retrospectives, really reflecting on the most basic way to do it is what went well
Mm.
and what is there to improve. Sometimes we'll do it in such a way that we focus on like more the behavior, like what should we do more of, what should we do less of, or what should we stop doing, what are some things we should keep doing, or like I said, that retro we just had, turn it up to 11. How can we like make this a little bit even better, iterate on it.
Mm.
So just that piece of reflection, because I actually do that just with myself sometimes, and think about like, hey, what went well this week? What areas do I have to improve? Okay, well, time kind of got away from me. Maybe I spent more time at work than I would have expected. How can I ensure that that doesn't happen? Or like a couple weeks ago, I missed lunch a few times because my schedule got so packed. So I started scheduling my lunch in so that I wouldn't miss my lunch. And I would just look in the morning, make sure I had a block of time where I could get at least 30 minutes for lunch in, so that, okay, I'm going to get lunch in this time. And that may be a strategy that teachers need to use. It's really easy to get caught up going from meeting to meeting to meeting, Google Meet to Zoom to whatever.
Mm.
And then you haven't eaten lunch, you haven't had a snack, and you're feeling miserable and you can't keep your energy up. Schedule your lunchtime in. But again, retrospectives. Retrospectives are a good way to reflect with your class or with a small group. How did this last week go? What things went well? With your grade level, with your staff as an administrator, what went well? What is there to improve? And again, always keeping the prime directive in mind. We did the best we could with what we knew at the time. And then you go back and you revisit it again. And usually there should be a list of action items that come out of that. So really digging into, if we struggled with um, a lot of parents who just didn't know what was going on with our schedule, how can we ensure that this doesn't happen next time? Okay, well, maybe we need more parent communication. Maybe we need a walkthrough video explaining exactly how to get to the schedule on the website. Okay, who's going to own that? So maybe Mrs. Smith is going to own that. So Mrs. Smith doesn't have to do the work. Mrs. Smith just has to make sure that that work gets done by someone. So just because you own that task, that action item, doesn't mean that you have to be the one to do the work. You just have to find the folks to do the work and make sure that it gets done.
Facts. Very, very dope. Very dope. So I think that's definitely a strategy that could be utilized because I mean that's just like an exit ticket on steroids ish type idea, right? So we want to make sure we do this check in. Like, yo, are you good? Are you not good? If you're not good, like, how can we make it so you are good? So yeah, I definitely. I mean, it's not so much far away from the concept that teachers already employ in mass. It's just adding another layer to it. Very, very dope. Very dope. So live video versus on demand. So this is like one of the big like this is Mike Tyson versus Riddick Bowe in the early '90s. There are a lot of this is if you especially at the beginning, a lot of teachers were on this like, do I shoot it while I'm recording the students? Do I even have the right to do that? Because do the kids have the right to refuse being recorded? Do I need a second monitor? Do I have this thing? How do I stop? So, from your perspective, and again, this might be a debate because I don't know what your answer is going to be here. Like, what is the more powerful practice at this point? That's also going to be so. Not when I say powerful, I'm saying this is going to keep the educator sane because again, That's a big piece here, right? Being We're working from home and you're living at your job, which is this weird, dichotomy there, right? So in terms of, if you were in the classroom, would you be recording things live via the Zoom or the Google Meet or whatever you're using, Microsoft Teams video thing or whatever? Or would you record your stuff in an on-demand fashion before you started?
I think that on demand is pasta and live is seasoning. That's how I think about it.
Explain.
So I think the bulk should be made of on demand for a few reasons. First of all, bandwidth issues. So if you're trying to do a live meet and show a video and show this other resource, like that's going to take it's going to eat a lot of your bandwidth, and especially if you live with other people. I'm assuming most teachers don't live so by themselves with the highest level internet connection that they can get from their internet service provider. So if you're sharing with a family, even just a spouse or a roommate, that can be taxing on your bandwidth. I think another reason for on demand is going back to that whole allowing students to access it whenever is convenient for them and whenever works for them. The bulk of the, like tier one type instruction, like they can access that whenever. That's the same thing for everybody. If it's pre-recorded, that in the end, I think ends up being less work for the teacher because once those videos are done, they're done. Like you may have to tweak them, but for the most part, they're completed and students can watch and rewatch as many times as they want. Also, rewatchability. So if I'm a student, I watch the lesson once, I don't quite get it, I want to go back, I want to pause. I have that option when it's recorded that I don't have when it's only live.
Mm.
So that's a few reasons I think on demand should be the pasta. It should be like the bulk of what you do. I think that the live sessions, however, add the spice and the flavor. And so those may be fewer, but they can be smaller groups, they can be shorter. When we're talking about, again, bandwidth for a lot of students, especially students who might be homeless, students who knows where their internet is coming from, how much they have, who they're sharing it with, trying to keep those sessions short and light is going to be beneficial to them so they can continue to engage. It's not going to eat up. I know a lot of teachers have been complaining about how, this is eating up a lot of their resources. Their internet bill is a lot higher than it was. So that's another way to cut down on that is keep those live sessions short. Attention span. Like I know any meeting that's longer than an hour is painful for me. Any meeting longer than a half an hour is kind of starting to get into painful territory. Because even as an adult, I can't stay engaged that long. It's exhausting.
Mm.
Watching yourself for that long is exhausting. Trying to pay attention, like there's just a lot going on. Also, it's a pandemic, so we forget that. Like people are stressed out. There's a lot going on. Adding more stress to that isn't helpful. As the teacher, those live sessions, if you're trying to show video and demonstrate this and walk through that, whatever, that's really stressful. So if you're talking about, I want to cut my stress level down, record your stuff so you can make it as pretty as you want or as messy as you want or whatever. Record the bulk of it and then use those live sessions as opportunities to connect with your students. Because we do this in software development too. We're really thoughtful about, could this be an email? Can we do it asynchronously with like a question and answer sheet or something? We do asynchronous pairing. So that's basically like I have a buddy. I just pass my work off to my buddy. My buddy works on the project, passes it back to me. So that's a real skill as well. But we do like to have those live touch points because certain times talking to someone live is a lot easier than trying to type something out in a message or an email or whatever. So, but make those live connections light and meaningful. I think that's probably the biggest thing. You had a really cool acronym for it, and
Sip,
I can't remember
sip,
what.
sip,
SIP.
sip. Like you're sipping a drink. You sip it, small little piece.
And SIP stood for,
Small, impactful, and personal.
there we go. Make it a sip. A tiny little sip, small, impactful, and personal. And I think that's where you're going to get the most bang for your buck when it comes to those live sessions. You're also going to save the bandwidth for you and for your students. So that's where I stand on it.
Well, I mean, I concur. I mean, this is one place we don't have any disagreements. I think for some other added reasons. All right. So first and foremost, no one wants to watch an hour video later on and start like having to go through and see, does this make sense to me? I don't want to have to rewatch an hour video. If it's 5 minutes, oh dude, you are concise. You told me exactly what you want me to do. There's an example there. God bless you. I can handle my business. But I'm not watching an hour video or like on replay, fam. That's not happening.
I was talking to my coworkers today and we record, there's a lot of meetings that get recorded. I watch almost none of them because I just don't. However, you know what I will watch is a 5 or 10-minute YouTube video.
I ain't watching no hour videos. And I think that's a universality, unless it's a motion picture that I'm sitting in front of in which there are car chases and aliens and other stuff. I ain't watching no hour video. So, that being the case, my thing is, if you want your content to even be consumed, part of it would be I don't want to do the recordings of my live lessons because I can go and storyboard my lesson out to under 10 minutes, get the book. And if my video has to be over 10 minutes, you're doing too much with it. I'm just gonna keep it 100. If it's more than 10 minutes, it's way too much stuff for some kid to do in one sitting. And if it's way too much for me to do in one sitting, after 3 minutes, I'm going to play Xbox. So it's not a scenario. I think part of it is just like you and adults, we don't want to watch no long videos either, right? So it's not like it's something wrong with this kid. It's just this is just how human nature works. So I think part of that is that scenario. The other thing is when I'm in the live session, if it's already recorded, there's a burden cognitively off of both my shoulders and on the learner's shoulders. I know that I can get this content in a smaller chunk somewhere else. So while we're sitting there, we can play games, we can laugh, we can talk about people's weekends, we can talk about what we miss about going outside when there was no COVID. We can have these real those personal relationships, and that we also have a scenario if you're using stand up or retro or something where we just talk about what are the issues with you getting the work done during that time. I don't need to bring in any new content because the new content is already shot. It's already available. The kid can go at his own pace. But Bob watched the video, which was 5 minutes. Bob then comes to me and says, yo, Mr. Lang, I didn't understand this piece, this piece, this piece. And I can make a reasonable assumption that if Bob didn't understand it, it's 5 or 6 other kids in the meeting that didn't understand it. Let me walk you through how to do it. Boom, boom. Now I get it. Now, that's purposeful. All right. It's concise and it's surgical. I solved a very specific problem rather than talking for an hour about something that, okay, I don't care anything about, nobody else cares anything about. And then getting angry when the kid is like, okay, let me go and the NBA Finals is on. I'm going to watch LeBron and I'm going to go to sleep. So if I am an educator, the on demand is the hustle, especially given 6 through 12. Like everyone, I believe, in the state of Nevada has access to Canvas. So if you're not someone who's Canvas competent, starting and playing around with Canvas now and saying, this is a tool in which I could create my entire content, all my stuff as on-demand content for students. So if I'm the child of somebody who works overnight, if I'm the child of somebody who works early in the morning, if I'm a child of someone who works in the midday, I have the same opportunity for success as a student who has perhaps two parents who are working at home. They can on demand help them with information. Because I think it also is an equity issue, right? It's a very big equity issue. You are now asking me as an ELL student, as a student of color, as a student of poverty, to be able to access your content at the same level as a student who doesn't have those characteristics, which again becomes a problem in terms of equity, right? Like, again, you can say Canvas and a lot of these tools have those immersive reader tools built into them where if I'm doing this on demand, I can have it read to me in my native language and I can succeed. Unless you're a bilingual educator, you can't compete with that in real life. If I don't speak English and you just talk to me for an hour in English, what did I benefit with that? I did benefit from it. And that's where you kind of got to have a situation where like, and then as a teacher, you're not frustrated. This kid doesn't speak English, sit there for an hour, and at the end it's like, Mister, and they start speaking Tagalog, and you're like, you know what I'm saying? So
Also, going back to the equity thing, I've seen a lot of posts on social media about teachers whose students are attending from the car, like they're being driven to class to a babysitter or a grandparent or some other grown up who's going to watch them for the day, and so they're attending this meet like while they're in the car. And I've even seen some stories of teachers marking kids absent because they're attending from the car. Talk about an issue of equity, like the fact that you aren't like they're doing their best to get there and you're still penalizing them for it. Like, and going back to the whole, if you're attending live, we're talking about now you're streaming on a cellular signal, it's not going to be as good. Like, just let them drive and they can get the content later and check in with you later. Like, why are you putting, why?
I got multiple students that do first thing in the morning, 8 o'clock. They pop on the
Yeah.
thing. Yo, Mr. Lang, they're on the phone. You can see the seatbelt and everything. I'm like, yo, dude, you know where the stuff is. It's already recorded. We're just hanging out here. You can hang out and laugh, but if something happens, don't have the pressure of having to join back into this meeting. That's not that big of a deal. Again, as the instructor, if you on demand record your materials, and we're going to go through some strategies and some tools that are hopefully going to make that a streamlined process rather than a scenario in which you feel like you have to cover a whole bunch of stuff because it's just not feasible given that if you're talking about taking a year's worth of content and it's smushing it into a semester, that ain't happening, fam. That's an impossible dream. That's an impossible dream.
Also, we know from evidence that stressed brains don't learn well, and every brain is under stress right now. That's
Facts.
just how it is.
Facts.
And for some reason, we're acting like that's not the case. So
Facts.
we have stressed out brains who aren't given the opportunity to do those things, engage in those activities that make them less stressed out. And now you're putting more stress on top of it. Like, how is any of this going to stick, even if you were to get the live lesson working and whatever? Like, no, use that time to meaningfully connect, de stress those brains so that when they do engage in the on demand content, there maybe is a possibility that it will stick instead of like piling on to an already filled stress plate.
And that just and we're also talking about the educator, right? You also are
Yeah.
stressed. So
Mm-hmm.
why not de-stress yourself and de-stress your students at the same time and have a scenario in which we are the idea of empathy rules everything. And this is something I try to tell parents and the grown-ups as they're on the calls with their students. We're gonna go and we're gonna read a story. Usually I just read a story, we laugh and joke about some stuff or whatever. All your stuff is here. If they can't get to everything, don't worry about it. We'll get to it the next time I see you. What we're not going to do is have a scenario where some kid is crying or wondering about stuff. Oh my God, I'm going to get an F because I didn't get XYZ done. Um, because that causes, in terms of the bedrock of everything, is relationships. And if the relationship is sour, that the relationship craters, then how can I go and teach you if you don't trust me anymore? Because you're going to get mad at me because I didn't do X, Y, and Z, and suddenly I don't even want to show up to your class anymore because I know I'm going to get yelled at, or I don't have your work accomplished or whatever. And again, I really think that there are ways to massage this scenario where everyone benefits at the end of the school year. The educators are going to see hopefully brand new skills that they developed. But think about it in the grand scheme of things. No pandemic, we don't have the forced evolution of the teaching profession. Like this, we are forcing people to evolve at this point, and I think that has been a benefit. No matter what the growing pains are right now, and the whatever is happening, it's going to benefit us in the long run for people to have the ability to utilize 21st century pedagogy in order to ensure that students are all prepared to have software developer jobs if they would like those.
Mm-hmm. I think too, like you and I were both digital learning coaches, and I don't think I ever had a teacher I worked with who regretted working with me in terms of like the skills that they developed. And because when you do develop those 21st century skills, like for example, even something as basic as using an LMS. When I was in the classroom, I remember I had to have students who would be like, "Oh, well, you never gave me that assignment," and I could bring up the receipts and be like, "Hey, you got this assignment. Like, what happened that you didn't get an opportunity to do it?" And also like teachers who have said, "Oh my gosh, I'm so grateful you showed me how to use a password manager. I'm so grateful that You showed me how to do all my stuff digital, so I don't have to wheel that cart back and forth with all the papers, and then they get lost, or they get coffee on them. Like, I'm glad you showed me how to use AutoGrader. Like, every teacher that I worked with that was positively invested in learning those skills was super grateful that they learned that skill set once we were done. Was it painful in the interim? Yes. It's like, I like having written, I do not like writing. It's very much like that. I like having the 21st century skills. Learning them, it can be a bit painful. But, learning anything can be a bit painful. It has its growing pains, but on the other side of it, you're glad that you have those skills.
Facts. You don't get, you can't be a bodybuilder without lifting weights, fam, and that crap hurts. So it
Hmm.
is. So like the live versus on demand, like I think we're on team on demand, even though the live thing, if you had to go do some stuff in the pinch, you had to go and hey, record your on demand situation. Salt Bay, most definitely.
Yeah.
Now, my whole philosophy with this whole deal has been less is more, right? And the less is more scenario, again, which is one of the reasons I like the on demand content, is I'm going to put the project out there. Right, the project's going to be there. I'm going to keep building modules and modules and modules, and they'll be there when you need them. But at the same time, uh, if the kid we're truly talking about asynchronous. Again, I think on demand is a cooler word, but we're talking about on demand learning. We're talking about, like, there was there's always been this big thing with teachers with the we want individualized so and so. This is the time to do that. Like, seriously, this is the time to do that. Um, with the idea that overall, if you build, especially in Canvas, where you can build the modules, you can have a scenario in which there's prerequisites for work. So great, you can go at your own pace. But I'm going to go over right now. We're in month 2, and I'm going to teach on demand the lessons that are in module 2. You are free to continue in module 1, but I'm going to teach the on demand lessons in module 2. And when you catch up, we can go and have that conversation about the things that you missed. But all of the content is already pre-recorded. So there's a scenario in which you should come with me, and this is one of the things I kind of harp on with my students. You should come with me with a question, not I don't understand. I don't understand doesn't get it from Mr. Lang anymore. What is your question so that I can provide you the best customer service possible, rather than I don't understand. Okay, that to me is a cop out answer. That's either you did not put the work in to watch the videos, or you decided that that 5-minute video was too long for to hold your attention, and you want me to explain it to you live when you didn't do that video. So there's a little checklist that my students have that, like, dude, if you ain't do these 3 things before you holler at me, I ain't answering your question.
What's on the checklist?
So first of all, did you watch the video? If the answer is no, like, go watch the video first. Did you watch the video twice? Nope. Go watch that video again, fam. Because again, if you're watching some YouTube personality that you love, you're gonna watch some same videos over and over. And those videos are a lot longer than 5 minutes. I seen them little when they're doing hide and go seek in people's houses and making slime and all that. Oh, I mean, they'll stay on those things for 45 minutes. It's a 5-minute video, fam. After that, you got plenty of homies, right? You with homies all you can talk about Roblox and what your Roblox username and all that stuff. You ask your homie, well, no, well, that's the problem, fam. Go talk to your boy. Because like you said before in the kind of the stand-up of our show, like, you went to a colleague to ask him about this certain thing, right? Before I went to the boss, I went to the colleague. The colleague said, oh, yo, this is how you do it. All right, bet that. And I'm gonna read. My father has given me 2 things that I will never forget. 2 things. The first one is, if you can do something about something, don't worry about it. If you can't do something about something, don't worry about it. That's the thing he told me as I was getting out of the car for the last time before he dropped me off to college. The other piece of information my father told me is you never want your boss to know what you don't know. And I've always kept that in the back of my head. The Googles and the internet allow you to be as smart as you want to be at a given moment. Go ahead, Webbs.
Oh, I was just gonna say, it's not new information. Like, teachers know this. It's basically the modern version of ask 3 before me. Watch your video twice, ask a friend. If that still doesn't get you where you need to go, then come talk to me. It's just ask 3 before me. The same way you pointed out the other day that pairing is just working with a partner. That's all it is. Like, we call it pairing, but it's just working with a partner. Like, pedagogically, this isn't particularly new. It's It's the same stuff. It's just slightly tweaked a little bit for a virtual world.
So I mean, when it comes down to it, um, one of the things I hate to see though, Webs, on and get on social media, you see this all the time, is people are stressed out about this and that. And I'm getting like the kid. We had a couple kids today talked about the amount of work they have due. I was like, yeah, okay, that's interesting. Let me see your actual Google Classroom. So they bring up the assignments. I'm like, wow, dude, that's a lot of stuff. That's a ton. And so, not having the empathy to say, we're going to stretch these things out. I'm going to look and see if you turn things in. And if you didn't turn them in, let me go and have that conversation with you. Let me go and have that retrospective kind of one-on-one with you, rather than the word that is the worst word in the lexicon of every educator, rigor. Like, like stabbed, set on fire, buried, choked, all kind of stuff. Like that is like the worst word ever, ever, ever. And it's like, okay, yeah, well, I'm trying to provide rigorous instruction. Nah, fam.
But dumping a truckload of work on someone isn't rigor. Like,
Oh, it's rigor mortis.
it's say it's rigor mortis.
Yeah, it's rigor mortis. That's what it is. That crap will kill you.
So going to the less is more thing. I know that for a lot of educators, the concern is like, oh, but grades. I have to have X number of grades in the grade book. Even if you're going to work within that paradigm, figure out the bare minimum of what you need to enter for the week. And those are the things that you make your, hey, kid, here's the things you need to do by the end of the week. All the videos are there for you. I'm going to touch base with you every day as long as these, because I think when I was in the classroom, it was like, I think we needed 2 grades for ELA, 2 grades for math, 1 for science, 1 for social studies, 1 for health or something. There's something along those lines. Okay, so that's like 2, 4, 5, 6, 7 things total for the week. That seems manageable. So start from there and build backwards. Like, even if you're
Play
trying to
with your
work within that
food.
paradigm.
Play with your
Yeah.
food. It don't need to be no 7th grade. It doesn't have to be 7 distinct grades. It could be 7 grades. So to me,
So
go ahead.
ELA and science, ELA and social studies, that can count for 2 things. You just evaluate it in 2 different ways for different tasks. So that significantly reduces the amount of work that a kid has to do because you've, mashed that together and made it so that it's a more manageable workload.
You've created real life teaching rather than pretend
Mm-hmm.
content areas.
For
Which
sure.
again, we can go into that at another point, but the pretend content areas are hilarious. So how might we actually do this foolishness? Um, I guess that is the biggest thing at this point. Like, what are some tools we might want to use? And so, that being the case, we're to kind of look at this deal.
I think one of the coolest things I've seen you share in the last few weeks is Flipgrid shorts.
Dude,
I find those super fun.
like, if you were like, I have no idea how to record squat, all right? Flipgrid is the tool. It is an all-in-one studio. Now, people will go and talk about, hey, use it with kids. If you're not ready to use it with kids, don't worry about it. You should use it as a teacher, though, for all your on-demand content if you're someone who is not an uber technically savvy person. One, it's on the web. I don't have to download Squat. If you're working off of a Chromebook, it's going to work fine for you. And if you're someone who doesn't know the specs of their computer, this is going to work fine for you too. As long as you can get on the internet, you're fine, right? You don't have to worry about, can I download Screencastify or Screencast-O-Matic or whatever. Don't have to worry about that at all. And so, even if somebody, and I've got, I'm a pretty decent person on the computer. This is still a place that I find myself going back because the ease in the slickness factor. Ease and slickness, all right? So we start talking about the situation totally free. It used to cost like $60 a year or something crazy like that, and I paid it every year, and then Microsoft bought it and said, oh, it's free for everyone, which kind of made me a little angry at first. I ain't gonna lie. All right, I ain't gonna lie at all. Now, that being the case, if you need to sign up with your Google information or your Microsoft information. So if you're in Washoe, Microsoft works here just like everything else. Submit that educator login deal here. And I'm not going to care anything about the discussions or anything. I'm going right to shorts at the very top of the screen. And you'll notice that, Again, I don't use it every day, but I like to use it because of the fact that, again, it is slick. It's easy to deal with. And again, you can build a video in about 2.5, 3 minutes, especially if you know what content you're going to deal with, how you're going to deal with it. Even if you just want to build, a lot of times what I do here is just build intros to videos. They're going to be larger videos because I don't feel like going and editing a big, well-to-do video. I just want to take this is our little intro to the day, our little trailer for the day's class, boom, 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 and I share that with students. Especially if you're using Canvas, this is a great solution because you don't even have to download the video. You can embed it. So let's look at it very, very quickly. So I'm gonna find, again, shorts. I don't care about discussion or discovery or activity or mix, any of those things. You can learn those when you want to. But shorts is what I'm gonna deal with. We're gonna record a video, and true to its name, the concept of shorts is 10 minutes. That's the first thing I like about it. It's going to stop you from being verbose. So you're not going to be able to shoot a 50-minute video because you physically cannot do so. If you can't explain it in 10 minutes, it's going to say, hey, good luck, fam. 10 minutes is what you got. So how do we go and say, if you need to explain to me the Pythagorean theorem and how to do that as a kid, you need to explain it to me in 10 minutes. And usually you can probably do it in more. Wes, go ahead.
I was just talking to a colleague today because we're planning a lunch and learn for next week. And I was telling him how when I would plan lessons, I'd break them down into 10-minute segments. And so if I had like a 50-minute block, I would say, okay, this 10 minutes, I'm going to talk about this 10 minutes, I'm going to talk about this, blah, blah, blah. And he was like, oh my gosh, that's such a smart idea. Like, break it down into 10-minute blocks, then it's a much more manageable, way of figuring out what you're going to talk about than trying to tackle a whole hour all at once. And so you can really think about your lessons, breaking them down into those 5 to 10-minute blocks and just saying, like, okay, I'm going to cover this topic and this topic and this topic. And if you string all 5 of these lessons together, that's what my old school in-person lesson would kind of be like.
Facts, facts, facts. So we got this deal here. Again, even if you decided, like, one of the things I'm noticing is that a lot of my direct instruction, I was not being concise. Like, I cut that crap down to like 3 or 4 minutes and just get really down to, these are the actual nuts and bolts of what I need you to learn without the frou-frou. The frou-frou I can do in the live lesson because essentially I'm there more as an entertainer than I am with the video that I want to be concise and direct to the point. The student is watching the video to get the work accomplished. They're not watching the video in order to be entertained as much, in my opinion. So we've got some buttons at the bottom here. We got the options first. Now, the reason I'm starting with the options first is because if I've got a video clip that already exists, I got something that I shot before, something on my phone, I took a walk around the neighborhood with my dog, and I want to kind of add some flavor to it, I can upload that video clip right into Flipgrid with no problems. It could live on my desktop, I could drag it to Google Drive and do what I need to do with it, whatever. I can also mirror the video. So if I want the video to actually mirror my exact background here, so I can do that if I like to. I can mute myself at any point, but I can also record the screen. Again, I don't need any other software. I can record the screen native inside of Flipgrid. So I click that little button, I go to the website that I want to deal with, and I can go ahead and record what I need to record. After that, here's what go ahead, Webs.
I was just going to say, I think that especially right now, it can be overwhelming, all the tools that are out there. I would highly recommend choosing one, and I would even recommend starting with something to deal with video because we talk so much about the on-demand piece and how important it is and how it will make your life easier. It may take a little practice, but really figure out a tool like this and just deal with this tool. Don't try to pick up, Wakelet or I don't know, any of the other stuff that's out. Don't try to learn Twitter or, figure out Roblox, or just focus on that one tool and dedicate like 5 to 10 minutes, set a timer. Say, hey, I'm going to deal with this for 5 minutes. I'm going to play around with this tool. When the timer goes off, I stop and I walk away for the day. Don't try to learn everything all at once. It's really important to walk away when that timer goes off because that will ensure that you're not hitting that level of frustration where you associate this negative feeling with trying to work with this tool that prevents you from coming back again the next day and spending some time on it. So I would highly recommend, if you're new to this, if you're feeling frustrated, if you're feeling overwhelmed, pick up Flipgrid, just focus on the shorts, and just spend a few minutes a day with it. Set your timer. Once it goes off, you quit and walk away. And if you do that for, I would say, a week, maybe two, you'll find that you're extremely proficient with this tool. Like, you can do most things with it with that little bit of effort invested. So often it seems so overwhelming, and we try to, bite off this giant chunk of tools and strategies and whatever. Keep it small, keep it simple, and just chip away at it 1% better every day.
Absolute facts. Absolute facts. And again, I didn't show you anything else in Flipgrid. I don't really care about anything else in Flipgrid. I just care about how can I build my on-demand content as easily as possible. And again, I think Flipgrid Shorts is the one. Like, if the one true ring, this is the one true ring. The other ones you got to do. I got to upload it to my Google Drive. And now this, everything, I can do the face-to-face here. I can do the screen recording, everything in one spot.
Also, just mess around with the tool. Don't try to do something for your lesson and use the tool. And this is also a pro tip for when you're introducing a new technology to your students. Give them an opportunity to play around with it for a while first in a very low stress environment. Because if you're trying to prepare a lesson and use this new tool, now you're like, oh, if I just did this the old way, my lesson would be done by now. Like, no, don't try to build anything for a lesson. Just screw around with the tool, be silly, take pictures of your dog or your cat or kids or whatever. Mess around with it, have fun with it. And that way you're building this positive feeling between you and this thing that you're trying to learn. And you're not trying to like stress yourself out by, doing your lesson and also learning a new tool.
Facts, facts, facts. So great, we got those things. You also, again, that if you want to make it a polished video, you want to make it kind of attractive or whatever, Flipgrid lets you do that very easily as well. So you'll see those like, oh, this person, obviously knows what they're doing. Well, all I did was use Flipgrid. So if you go to the effects there, you got some filters you can utilize. You can make your video, it's really attractive in terms of, okay, cool, I'm gonna make it cinematic, make it green. I can go and get my my Cecil B. DeMille on, and even pixelate myself if I want to, make myself look like some blocks. All right, all those things are all there. Don't want a filter? I cannot have a filter as well. But let's go and just throw the rainbow filter on there just because it's kind of cool, especially with the my hat on. It makes it kind of look kind of pop a little bit, right? So if I go back to my effects there, I can add a frame. One of the coolest frames again is that news. You have that breaking news film. I like using this one because it puts you in this different body, right? Now I'm a newscaster. And because once you get to the point where you use this with your students are going to say, oh my goodness, I can make my own newscast as well. Let's write a script, etc. And this is all built in. I didn't code this. It's all built into it. I just need to rock and roll with the filter there. So creating scenarios in which you create actual factual scenarios. Hey, we're going to use this math, breaking news. Fractions have run amok in Metropolis, and we have to put them back together so they're one whole. All right, great, fine, dandy. The other thing that's inside the effects are those, you have the type. And so, again, there's tons of different things we can deal with. I'm going to make that background purple, and I'm going to call myself Mr. Lang there. And you see how that kind of pops there on the screen. Great little neon deal there. I move that where I want it. I can make it smaller. I can make it bigger. Great. I can take the vocabulary words that we're learning and put them around my face. All kind of really cool stuff like that. All right. Great. We'll leave there. Go on back. Go back again. I can also add a whiteboard here. And that whiteboard, by definition, is going to split. All right. I can split it so it takes the whole screen. I can move it backwards. I can do this at any point while I'm recording. All right. Gets a little funky trying to write on with draw with the pencil there, but I can use the text function to type those things right on the lines. A lot more efficient. Same thing. I mean, generally, if I'm doing small pieces of math, you can use your mouse to do those very easily. Great, fine, dandy. That's all going to be recorded there. You can also add photos. One of the things to kind of play around with, we might go and explore is like making logos. Make sure your kids making logos is fun. You having a logo is fun. It's cool. Make a logo, people. If you don't know how to use it, we may have to do a show on making logos. But that's really dope. I just hit the record button. Hello, 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 hello. Hello, 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 hello. Hello, hello. And you're going to see I can add as much as I would like, as long as I don't go past that 10 minutes there. So I can add more, but go to the next button there. selfie time. And one of the things before, I thought this was like the worst waste of time ever. It's like, this is stupid. Why am I taking a selfie? Until I started to learn about, or started to think about the fact that, first of all, I could select a frame of myself. So if there was a particular place where I wanted to have that answer someplace, I could do that. Hello, 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 hello. Hello, 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 hello. Or the other thing I can deal with, oops, is I can actually add text to remind students to do certain processes, not to, don't run in the hallway, whatever you need to go and tell them to do there. So you can do that deal there. So I'm just going to say, remember.
I think you actually just hit on something that is an important thing to keep in mind. And that is that even when we go back eventually in person at some point, it's not like the skill set will have been a waste of time. It means that your policies and procedures can be done in Flipgrid shorts, so you can introduce them to students at the beginning of the year and have them every year in perpetuity. It means that the videos that you create for certain lessons you can use again and again and again, and you really only have to update them maybe once every couple years. So if you create a library of stuff that you can use and reference, that is, you can make it so that you use that over and over. It's not like once you go back in person, like this is a waste of time and you shouldn't have learned these skills. Like they'll be really beneficial even after you go back in person.
Facts. So the last, like the piece that,
Kids who
go ahead, Webs.
kids who miss school, you
Yes.
know? If you have your lesson recorded, they don't have to miss anything. If you're, I mean, I don't know, this probably happens more in Reno than anywhere else, but if you have a snow day, you don't really have to worry about snow days anymore. You can just, everything's on demand.
Facts, facts, facts. So the reason why I like this, again, I'm going to click. There's my video. I got closed captions there as well. So my friends who perhaps are going to have some audio issues, I can have them read those things. Closed captions are also dope for your reading instruction. So even if you don't have audio issues, asking kids to go and read those things is there. I can copy that link. I can download the video and add it to some kind of different project, but I can embed it. So if you're using Canvas as your primary means of instruction, embed code there. I don't need to download the squad. I just throw it in my Canvas course. Microsoft Teams for the homies up in the north. Google Classroom as well. So all those things are there. We're good to go. So in the grand scheme of things, like, there's really no reason to like spend an exorbitant time trying to find a way to record the videos and stuff when the Flipgrid shorts by definition keeps you to a small piece. You could always, if you're just like, I'm a screencastify person or screencast-o-matic person, whatever. You can take those little videos and upload them into the Flipgrid shorts. It'll look a lot prettier than it would be just in Screencastify. So, final thoughts, Webs?
Keep it simple and iterate. Do tiny micro adjustments over time. I think that what you'll find is if you get used to or you're familiar with, you build that skill in Flipgrid shorts, then you'll move on to you'll be looking for a bigger, better tool, and it'll be a natural, like a hermit crab outgrowing its shell.
Indeed, indeed.
It happened with my friend Diana. She had been working on an iMovie and then eventually started asking, like, well, but I want to do this cool thing with my words, or I want to do this, or whatever. And I was like, you have to move up to a more complex tool because you've outgrown this one. And that'll happen naturally. And then you won't be moving to a new tool out of frustration. You'll be moving because you now want more from your tool. And I think that's part of this whole situation now too is there's a digital literacy that folks are developing to figure out, what specs do I need in my computer to run a certain thing, or how do I evaluate if this is the right tool for video editing for me or not? And that's a really cool tool to have in your set of, magical Hermione bag type
Talk
things.
to your children, your students, your pupils. They know cool stuff because they are on the internet all the time. Ask them, yo, I want to do X. How can I do it? Oh, I use so and so tool. I do this. I do. That's just a dope way to do stuff, man. Like I've stolen tools from kids all over. I'll be like, when we were face to face, I look over somebody's shoulder. They'd be like, they're doing this thing. Like, what is that? Oh, I found this on the internet doing X, Y, Z. Cool. Mine now. and then I integrate that in my lesson plans, and we're good to go.
And usually you can catch them. So like this happened with me a lot too. I'd have a student come to me and say, "Can I use XYZ tool to do this project, blah blah blah?" And I would just say, "Is it appropriate for school?" And then either I would get yes right away, or I'd get and then you're like, okay, if it's not appropriate for school, I mean, granted, that'd be a little more challenging maybe with older kids, but with like kids, I would say 5th grade and younger, usually if you ask that question right away and they pause, you know that, like, well, and sometimes I would just say, you decide. You decide if you think that's an appropriate tool for school, and we'll see what happens. And inevitably, they would be like, all right, I'm not going to use that tool. they would kind of go through mentally like, what would it look like if I present this to Miss Weber, like, and they would make the right choice.
Risk assessments,
Mhm.
the risk management. We have the part of the government that does risk management for us. So super dope. This was the inaugural, very first Invincible episode. The homie Webbs, Mike Lang. We'll be back for more. Hopefully you'll be back for more too. We'll holler at your folks. And again, stay intelligent, stay introspective, but make sure you be invincible, man. That's what the hustle be. God bless America.
Bye, everybody.